It was February 7th, 2026, at 2:47 a.m. when a crushing weight of spiritual desperation drove me to a hidden desert oasis 30 miles outside of Sedona, and there, surrounded by ancient palm trees whose fronds whispered secrets in the pre-dawn darkness, their reflections shimmering like liquid silver in the still pool that mirrored the countless stars above, Jesus materialized before me with tears streaming down his face and revealed that 99% of Christians are praying prayers that heaven cannot answer, prayers that bounce off a closed gate because they're missing the one element, the one posture, the one heart cry that causes the Father to say yes instead of wait, or worse, I never knew you. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it. But you've been marked. You've been marked by the Father himself to receive what I'm about to share over these next 4 nights. And I need you to understand something before we go any further. What happened to me in that desert oasis wasn't something I sought. It wasn't something I manufactured. It wasn't the result of fasting or spiritual disciplines or trying to have some mystical experience. It was a divine interruption, a holy ambush, and it has wrecked me in the most beautiful and terrifying way possible. Before I take you into what happened, I need you to do something for me. I need you to leave your prayer request in the comments right now. Don't wait until the end of this video. Do it now, because what I'm about to share with you is going to unlock something in the heavenly realm over your life. But you have to participate. You have to step into this moment with faith. Write it out. Jesus, I need. And then tell him what's breaking your heart. Tell him what's keeping you awake at 3 a.m. Tell him what you've been too afraid or too ashamed to voice out loud. And listen, if you're one of the true believers, and I mean true believers, not the casual Christians who show up on Easter and Christmas, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell. Because what's coming in parts 2, 3, and 4 is going to challenge everything you think you know about prayer, about access to the Father, about why your prayers might be hitting a ceiling instead of reaching the throne room. This isn't for everyone. This is for the remnant. This is for those who have ears to hear what the Spirit is saying. You know me as Jonathan Rumi. You know me as the actor who has the profound privilege of portraying Jesus in The Chosen. And I want to be clear about something. I don't claim to be Jesus. I don't claim to have some special hotline to heaven that you don't have access to. But what I can tell you is that spending years studying his words, his mannerisms, his heart, has created a sensitivity in my spirit. It's opened up something, and on this particular night, February 7th, 2026, at 2:47 in the morning, that sensitivity became a full-blown encounter that has left me undone. Let me take you there. I couldn't sleep. For 3 nights prior, I'd been wrestling with something in my spirit, a restlessness, an agitation that I couldn't name. I'd been praying, but my prayers felt hollow, empty, like words bouncing off my bedroom ceiling. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever poured your heart out to God and felt like you were talking to yourself? That's where I was. And in my frustration, I heard this whisper, go to the desert, go to the place of thirst, go to where water shouldn't be but is. I knew exactly where he meant. Where? There's this oasis. I can't tell you exactly where because it's become sacred ground to me, but it's deep in the Arizona desert, accessible only by a rough dirt road that tears up your suspension and tests your commitment. I'd been there once before, years ago, and the moment I saw it, I knew it was a thin place. You know what I mean by thin places? Those locations where the veil between heaven and earth seems almost transparent, where the natural and supernatural kiss. I threw on jeans and a jacket, because the desert at night is brutally cold, something people don't realize, and I drove. The heater in my truck barely worked, and I could see my breath fogging up the windshield. The stars were so bright they looked like holes punched in black velvet with pure light bleeding through. No moon, just stars. Millions of them. When I arrived at the oasis, I killed the engine and sat there for a moment in the silence. The silence of the desert is unlike any other silence on earth. It's not just the absence of sound, it's the presence of something else, something ancient, something that was there before humans built cities and highways and created the constant hum of civilization. I stepped out of the truck, and the cold hit me like a physical force. It had to be in the low 40s, maybe high 30s. My breath came out in visible puffs. I grabbed my flashlight, but something told me not to turn it on, so I walked by starlight alone. The path to the oasis winds through desert scrub, creosote bushes that smell like rain even when it hasn't rained, prickly pear cacti standing like sentinels, ocotillo branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. My boots crunched on the sandy soil, An owl called out somewhere in the darkness, a long, mournful sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. And then I saw it. The oasis opened before me like a secret garden hidden in the wasteland. 7 ancient palm trees, I counted them, surrounded a pool of water so still it looked like polished obsidian. The palms were massive, their trunks thick and weathered, their fronds creating a canopy that rustled softly in a breeze I couldn't feel at ground level. The pool itself was maybe 30 feet across, fed by an underground spring that has sustained life in this dead place for centuries, maybe millennia. I walked to the edge of the water and knelt down. The sand was cool and damp beneath my knees. I could smell the water, fresh, clean, mineral rich. I could smell the palms, a sweet, almost date-like fragrance, and underneath it all, the sharp, clean scent of the desert itself. I started to pray. Jesus, I said out loud, my voice sounding strange in the silence. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what you want from me, but I'm tired of prayers that go nowhere. I'm tired of feeling like I'm on the outside looking in. I'm tired of... And that's when the temperature changed. It wasn't gradual. It was instant. The cold that had been biting at my exposed skin suddenly gave way to warmth. Not oppressive heat, but the kind of warmth you feel when someone who loves you wraps you in an embrace. The kind of warmth that goes deeper than skin, that reaches into your bones, into your soul. The stars seemed to brighten. The pool before me began to glow, not with reflected light, but with its own luminescence, as if the water itself had become liquid light. And the reflection in that pool, oh God, the reflection. It wasn't the palm trees, it wasn't the stars. It was a face, his face. And then he wasn't just in the reflection. He was standing on the other side of the pool, and the light was coming from him, radiating from him in waves that made the air shimmer. Jesus. Not the Jesus of Sunday school flannel boards, not the Jesus of Renaissance paintings with pale skin and flowing robes. This was the Jesus of Revelation, eyes like flames of fire, face shining like the sun in its strength, presence so overwhelming that every cell in my body screamed at me to fall down, to hide, to run. But I couldn't move. He was weeping. Tears were streaming down his face, catching the light, looking like diamonds tracing paths down his cheeks, and his expression. I'll never forget his expression as long as I live. It was grief, pure, unfiltered grief mixed with a love so intense it was almost unbearable to witness. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice was like thunder and whisper at the same time, like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere, like it was outside me and inside me simultaneously. "Do you know why most prayers never open heaven's gate?" I couldn't speak. I tried, but no words would come. I just shook my head. He walked around the pool toward me. No, he didn't walk. He glided, his feet barely seeming to touch the ground, and he knelt beside me. Knelt. The King of Kings knelt in the sand next to me, and I could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell something like myrrh and frankincense and something else, something indescribable. "They pray from their need," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "They pray from their want. They pray from their desperation, but they don't pray from the one place that opens every door in heaven." "What place?" I managed to whisper. He reached out and placed his hand over my heart. His hand was warm, so warm, and the moment he touched me, I saw. Oh God, I saw. It was like a vision exploded in my mind, but I was still fully aware of where I was, kneeling by the pool, the desert night around me, his hand on my chest, but I was also seeing something else. Something that existed in another dimension, another reality. I saw millions of prayers rising like smoke toward heaven. I saw them ascending from churches, from bedrooms, from hospital rooms, from cars stuck in traffic, from people on their knees in desperation. They rose like incense, like clouds, filling the space between earth and the throne room of God. But there was a gate, a massive gate, more beautiful and terrible than anything I could describe. It was made of pearl, one single pearl, just like Revelation describes, and it was closed, not locked, not barred, just closed. And all these prayers, millions upon millions of them, were piling up in front of that gate like letters that couldn't be delivered. "Why?" I gasped. "Why won't the gate open?" Jesus' grip on my chest tightened, and more tears fell from his eyes, landing on my hands, and where his tears touched my skin, I felt a burning sensation, not painful but intense, like being branded with love itself. "Because they come demanding," he said. "They come negotiating, they come bargaining, they come with their lists and their needs and their wants, and they think that's prayer. but the gate only opens for those who come with the one thing the Father cannot resist. What? I was crying now too, tears streaming down my face, mixing with the desert dust on my cheeks. What is it? Tell me. He pulled his hand away from my chest, and immediately I felt the loss of that warmth like a physical ache. He stood and walked back to the edge of the pool, and as he moved, the palm fronds above us began to sway violently. Though there was still no wind, I could feel the water in the pool began to ripple, circles expanding outward from where he stood. Surrender, he said, turning to face me. Complete, total, absolute surrender. Not the surrender that says, "Okay, God, I'll do it your way if you do this for me." Not the surrender that's really just another form of negotiation, but the surrender that says, "Not my will, but yours," even if you say no, even if you take everything from me, even if I never understand why, even if it costs me everything I love, your will, not mine. The vision intensified. I saw a single prayer, just one, rise from somewhere on earth. It was different from all the others. It didn't push against the gate. It didn't demand entry. It simply waited. And as I watched, the gate began to open, slowly at first, then wider, wider, until light poured through, light so bright it made the sun look dim, and that single prayer was swept up in that light and carried directly to the throne, and I heard the Father's voice. I actually heard it say one word, "Yes." That prayer, Jesus said, pointing at the vision that was still playing out in my mind, came from a woman who just lost her child. She prayed, "Father, I don't understand. I'm broken. I'm destroyed. But I trust you, not because I feel like it, not because it makes sense, but because you are God and I am not. Your will be done." And heaven moved for her. Angels were dispatched. Miracles were set in motion, not because she had perfect faith, not because she said the right words, but because she surrendered. The vision faded, and I was back fully in the desert oasis, gasping for air like I'd been underwater. Jesus was still standing by the pool, watching me with those eyes that saw everything, every secret, every sin, every hidden place in my heart. "How many prayers?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "How many prayers are sitting outside that gate right now because people won't surrender?" His face crumpled with fresh grief. "Millions," he whispered, "millions upon millions. Prayers for healing that would be answered, prayers for provision that would be granted, prayers for salvation of loved ones that would be fulfilled, all waiting outside a gate that would open if they would just let go." He walked toward me again, and this time he sat down in the sand beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. He picked up a handful of sand and let it run through his fingers, and as it fell, each grain caught the light and sparkled like a tiny star. "Do you know what most Christians pray?" he asked, his voice soft now, almost conversational, but with an undercurrent of such sadness it made my chest ache. They pray, "God, here's my problem. Here's my solution. Please implement my solution." They come to the King of the universe with a script and ask him to read his lines. They come to the Creator of all things and tell him how to create. They come to the Alpha and Omega and try to write his story. He let the last of the sand fall from his hand and turned to look at me directly. And then they wonder why heaven is silent. A coyote howled in the distance, a long, wavering cry that sounded almost like weeping. The palm fronds rustled more urgently now, and I realized the wind was picking up. The temperature was dropping again. The stars seemed to pulse in the sky above us. "I need you to understand something," Jesus said, his voice taking on a tone of authority that made me sit up straighter. "What I'm showing you isn't just for you. It's for everyone who will watch this video. It's for everyone who has felt like their prayers hit a ceiling. It's for everyone who has cried out in the night and heard only silence. It's for everyone who has wondered if God even listens anymore." He stood up, and as he did, he seemed to grow taller, more radiant, more other. The light emanating from him intensified until I had to shield my eyes. "The gate is still there," he said, his voice now echoing across the desert, seeming to come from the sky itself. "The gate is still waiting, and it will open. It will open for anyone who comes with a surrendered heart. Not a perfect heart, not a sinless heart, but a surrendered heart. A heart that says, 'Your will, not mine. Your way, not mine. Your timing, not mine. Your glory, not mine.'" And then he began to fade. Not all at once, but gradually, like morning mist burning off under the rising sun. The light dimmed. The warmth receded. The supernatural presence that had made the very air feel thick and charged began to dissipate. "Wait!" I called out, reaching toward him. "Don't go. I have so many questions. I need to know more." His voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Tomorrow night, same place, same time. I will show you what happens when people refuse to surrender. I will show you the cost of prayers that demand instead of submit. Come back, Jonathan. Come back and see what most Christians never want to see." And then he was gone. The cold rushed back in like a wave, and I gasped, wrapping my arms around myself. The pool was just a pool again, dark, still, reflecting only stars. The palm trees were just trees, their fronds moving gently in a natural breeze. The desert was just the desert, but I was not the same. I don't know how long I sat there, maybe an hour, maybe more, just processing what had happened. My mind was reeling, my heart was pounding. Every theological framework I'd built over years of study and prayer and ministry was being shaken to its foundation. When I finally stood up, my legs were stiff and my body was shaking, partly from cold, partly from the aftershock of what I'd experienced. I walked back to my truck in a daze, started the engine, and drove home as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. I'm recording this now, just hours after it happened, because I can't not share it. I can't keep this to myself, and I know that some of you watching this are going to think I've lost my mind. Some of you are going to click away. Some of you are going to leave comments calling me a heretic or a false prophet or worse. But some of you, maybe just a handful, maybe more, are going to feel something stir in your spirit as you watch this. You're going to recognize the truth of what I'm saying because you've felt it yourself. You've felt the frustration of unanswered prayers. You've felt the confusion of a heaven that seems closed. You've wondered what you're doing wrong, and I'm here to tell you it's not about doing more. It's not about praying harder or longer or with more faith. It's about surrendering deeper. Tomorrow night, well, tonight now, I suppose, since it's already February 8th, I'm going back to that oasis. Jesus told me to come back, and I'm going to obey, and I'm going to share with you what he shows me next, because this is just the beginning. This is just the opening of a revelation that's going to challenge everything you think you know about prayer, about access to God, about why some prayers are answered and others aren't. Leave your prayer request in the comments right now, but I want you to do something different. Don't just tell Jesus what you want. Tell him you surrender to whatever he wants. Tell him you trust him even if he says no. Tell him you're willing to let go of your agenda for his. And subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because what's coming in the next 3 parts is going to be intense. It's going to be challenging. It's going to require something from you. Until then, remember, the gate is waiting. The question is, are you willing to come to it with empty hands and a surrendered heart? It was 3:15 a.m. on February 8th, 2026, when I returned to the desert oasis, and this time I came with fear knotting my stomach like a fist, because I knew that what Jesus was about to show me would be harder to witness, harder to accept, and infinitely harder to share with you. The night was colder than before, the temperature having dropped into the mid-30s, and as I made that bone-jarring drive down the dirt road, my headlights cutting through absolute darkness, I could see my breath fogging the windshield despite the struggling heater. The stars overhead seemed even more numerous than the previous night, like God had scattered an extra handful of diamonds across the velvet black, and there was something expectant in the air, something that made my skin prickle and my heart race even before I arrived. I want to pause here and address something before I take you deeper into what happened. Yesterday's video, part 1, has already stirred up exactly what I knew it would. Some of you have left prayer requests that brought me to tears. Hundreds of you have written out your surrenders, your letting go, your not my will, but yours. And I'm telling you right now, heaven is moving over those prayers. The gate is opening. You're going to see breakthrough in ways you never expected. But some of you have pushed back. Some of you have said, Jonathan, this sounds like works. This sounds like you're saying we have to earn God's attention. And I need to be crystal clear. That's not what this is. This isn't about earning anything. This isn't about being good enough or spiritual enough or surrendered enough to twist God's arm. This is about alignment. This is about coming into agreement with the heart of the Father instead of demanding he come into agreement with ours. There's a massive difference, and what Jesus showed me on this second night made that difference devastatingly clear. If you're just joining this series, you need to go back and watch part 1. You need to understand what happened on that first night. The vision of the gate, the millions of prayers piling up outside it, the revelation about surrender. Because what I'm about to share builds on that foundation, and without it, you're going to miss the full weight of what's being revealed. For those of you who are continuing this journey with me, leave another prayer request in the comments right now. But this time, I want you to add something. Jesus, show me where I'm holding back. Show me where I'm demanding instead of surrendering. Show me what I need to let go of. That's a dangerous prayer, friends. That's a prayer that will cost you something, but it's also a prayer that will unlock everything. Now let me take you back to the oasis. I parked in the same spot as the night before, killed the engine, and sat in the sudden silence for a long moment. My hands were shaking, not from cold, though it was frigid, but from anticipation mixed with dread. I didn't know what I was about to see, but Jesus' final words from the previous encounter kept echoing in my mind. I will show you what happens when people refuse to surrender. I will show you the cost of prayers that demand instead of submit. The cost. That word had haunted me all day. What cost? Whose cost? And why did I have the sinking feeling that what I was about to witness would break my heart? I grabbed my jacket from the passenger seat, a heavier one this time because I'd learned my lesson about desert nights, and stepped out into the cold. The door of my truck closing sounded like a gunshot in the silence. An immediate chill wrapped around me, and I could feel the cold air burning in my lungs with each breath. The walk to the oasis felt longer this time. The path seemed darker, the shadows deeper. The creosote bushes looked like crouching figures in the starlight. The cacti seemed to lean toward me as I passed, their spines catching glints of light like tiny daggers. That same owl from the night before called out. Or maybe it was a different owl, I couldn't tell, but this time its cry sounded less mournful and more like a warning. When the oasis came into view, I stopped dead in my tracks. It was different. The 7 palm trees were still there, their massive trunks and rustling fronds unchanged. The pool was still there, its surface mirror smooth and reflecting the stars. But the atmosphere had shifted. If the previous night had felt like anticipation, this night felt like grief. The air itself seemed heavy, thick, like it was saturated with sorrow, and there was a smell, faint but distinct, like rain about to fall, though there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I approached the pool slowly, my boots crunching on the sand, and knelt in the same spot as before. The sand was cold and damp, soaking through my jeans almost immediately. I could hear the palm fronds rustling more urgently now, though the breeze at ground level was barely noticeable. And underneath that sound, I could hear something else, a whisper, or maybe many whispers, too faint to make out words but present nonetheless. Jesus, I said aloud, my voice sounding small and uncertain. I'm here. I came back like you asked. I'm ready to see whatever you need to show me. The temperature shifted instantly, just like before. That sudden warmth that defied the natural cold, that supernatural heat that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. The pool began to glow with that same inner luminescence, and the water's surface started to ripple despite the absence of wind. And then he was there. Not gradually this time, not fading into view. One moment the space across the pool from me was empty, and the next moment he was standing there, fully present, fully radiant, and the grief on his face was so profound it made me gasp. He looked different than the night before. His eyes were still like flames, his face still shining with that otherworldly light, but his expression, oh God, his expression was that of someone who had witnessed unspeakable tragedy. His cheeks were wet with tears that hadn't stopped flowing, and his hands were clenched at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from something. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice cracked with emotion. "Are you sure you want to see this? Once you see what I'm about to show you, you cannot unsee it. Once you know what I'm about to reveal, you cannot unknow it, and you will carry the weight of this knowledge for the rest of your life." I swallowed hard, my mouth had gone dry. "I need to see it," I whispered. "If it's truth, I need to see it. And they need to know." I gestured vaguely, meaning all of you watching this video, all of you who would eventually hear this message. He nodded slowly, and fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. "Then look," he said, and he gestured toward the pool. The water's surface began to change. The reflection of stars disappeared, replaced by images that moved and shifted like I was watching a screen, except it was three-dimensional, alive, more real than reality itself. And what I saw made my blood run cold. I saw a man, middle-aged, graying hair, wearing a suit, kneeling beside a hospital bed. In the bed was a woman, clearly his wife, clearly dying. Machines beeped around her. IV lines ran into her arms. Her breathing was shallow and labored, and the man was praying. "God, you have to heal her," he was saying, his voice desperate, his hands gripping the bedrail so hard his knuckles were white. You have to. I've served you my whole life. I've tithed faithfully. I've led worship. I've done everything right. You owe me this. You owe me her healing. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. Heal her. Heal her now. I watched as his prayer rose like smoke from that hospital room, ascending toward heaven, and I could see it. I could actually see it approaching that massive pearl gate. But as it got closer, something happened. The prayer began to harden. It crystallized, turning from smoke into something solid, something sharp, something that looked almost like a weapon. And when it reached the gate, instead of the gate opening, the prayer just bounced off. It ricocheted back, falling, dissipating, disappearing into nothing. No, I breathed, watching the scene unfold. No, no, no. The man in the hospital room kept praying, kept demanding, kept insisting that God owed him. And his wife, I watched her take her last breath. I watched the machines flatline. I watched the man's face crumple in devastation and rage. You failed me, he screamed at the ceiling, at God. I did everything right and you failed me. The vision in the pool shifted, and I saw the same man 5 years later. He was sitting in a bar, drunk, bitter, his life in ruins. He'd walked away from faith entirely. He'd walked away from the church. He'd walked away from everything because in his mind, God had broken a contract. God had failed to deliver on what he believed he was owed. Stop, I said, tears streaming down my face. Please, stop. I can't. But Jesus shook his head. You need to see it all, he said gently but firmly. You need to understand the cost. The vision shifted again, and this time I saw a young woman, maybe mid-20s, sitting in her car in a parking lot crying. She was praying about a relationship, about a man she loved who didn't love her back. God, you promised me a husband, she was saying through her tears. You promised me a godly man, and I know it's him. I know it's him. So make him love me, change his heart, make him see that we're meant to be together. I've waited so long. I've been patient. Now it's your turn to deliver. Make him love me. Again, I watched her prayer rise, watched it approach the gate, watched it harden into demand instead of surrender, and again, the gate remained closed. The prayer bounced off, fell away, disappeared. The vision fast-forwarded, and I saw the same woman 10 years later, still single, still bitter, still angry at God for not keeping his promise. She'd become cynical, hardened, telling everyone who would listen that prayer doesn't work, that God doesn't care, that faith is just wishful thinking. How many? I asked Jesus, my voice breaking. How many people are living in bitterness and disappointment because they prayed demands instead of surrenders? He walked around the pool toward me, and with each step he took, the visions in the water intensified. I saw hundreds of them now, thousands playing out simultaneously, people praying for jobs they believed they deserved, for houses they were convinced God had promised them, for ministries they were certain were their calling, for healing they demanded as their right, for breakthrough they insisted was owed to them. And every single one of those prayers hit that closed gate and fell away unanswered. Jesus knelt beside me again, and this time he took both of my hands in his. His hands were warm, calloused, strong, the hands of a carpenter, the hands of a creator. And they were shaking. Do you understand now? He asked, his face inches from mine, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made me want to look away, but I couldn't. Do you understand the cost of unsurrendered prayer? It's not just that the prayer goes unanswered. It's that the person becomes bitter. They become disillusioned. They walk away from faith entirely, believing that God failed them, when in reality they never gave God the chance to answer because they were too busy telling him what the answer had to be. He released one of my hands and gestured back toward the pool, where the visions were still playing out. Every single one of these people could have had their prayers answered, he said, his voice thick with grief. Every single one, but not in the way they demanded, not according to their timeline, not according to their plan. The man whose wife died. I had a plan for healing, not physical healing of her body, but spiritual healing of their marriage that had been broken for years. I was going to use her illness to bring them back together, to restore what had been lost, to give them 6 more months of intimacy and reconciliation that would have prepared him for her passing and given him peace. But he wouldn't surrender to my way. He demanded his way, and so he got neither. I was sobbing now, my whole body shaking with the weight of what I was hearing. And the woman? I managed to ask. The one praying about the relationship? Jesus' expression softened with such tenderness it made my chest ache. I had someone for her, he said quietly. someone perfect for her, someone who would have cherished her, honored her, built a life with her that would have been more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. But she was so fixated on the man she wanted, so convinced she knew better than me, that she never even noticed when I brought the right man across her path. He was there. He was interested. He was everything she'd actually prayed for in her honest moments, but she was too busy demanding I change the wrong man to see the right man I'd already provided. The wind picked up suddenly, violently, and the palm fronds above us thrashed like they were in agony. The temperature dropped sharply, and I could see my breath again, could feel the cold biting through my jacket. The water in the pool began to churn, waves forming where there should be none, and the visions on its surface became more chaotic, more desperate. Jesus stood abruptly and walked to the very edge of the pool, staring down into the churning water. "Do you want to know the worst part?" he asked, his back to me, his shoulders tense. "The absolute worst part of all of this?" "What?" I whispered, not sure I could handle anything worse than what I'd already seen. He turned to face me, and the anguish on his face was so raw, so unfiltered, that I had to look away. "The worst part," he said, his voice rising with emotion, "is that I died for this. I hung on a cross, I bore the weight of every sin, I descended into hell itself, I conquered death, all of it so that they could have access to the Father, so that the veil could be torn, so that the gate could be opened, and they're standing outside that gate with their fists raised, demanding entry on their terms, when all they have to do is knock with a surrendered heart and it would swing wide open." He walked toward me again, and this time there was something almost fierce in his expression, something that reminded me that he's not just the Lamb of God, but also the Lion of Judah. "Do you know what the Father wants to give them?" he asked, his voice intense. "Do you know what's waiting on the other side of that gate if they would just surrender?" I shook my head, unable to speak. "Abel, everything," he said simply. "Not everything they think they want, but everything they actually need. Everything that would bring them true joy, true peace, true fulfillment. The Father's plans are so much bigger, so much better, so much more beautiful than anything they could conceive. But they'll never know, because they're too busy writing their own scripts and demanding he follow them." The visions in the pool suddenly stopped, and the water went still again, smooth as glass. The wind died down, the temperature stabilized, and in the sudden silence I could hear my own heart pounding in my chest. Jesus sat down in the sand again, and this time he looked exhausted, not physically, but spiritually, emotionally, like the weight of what he'd just shown me had cost him something to reveal. "I need you to understand something crucial," he said, his voice quieter now but no less intense. "This isn't about God being petty. This isn't about him withholding good things because people don't say the magic words. This is about the fundamental nature of how the kingdom works." He picked up a handful of sand, just like the night before, and let it run through his fingers. "The kingdom operates on surrender," he said, watching the sand fall. "It always has, from the very beginning. Not my will, but yours." That's not just a nice phrase. That's the key that unlocks everything. Because when you surrender, you're acknowledging who God is. You're acknowledging his sovereignty, his wisdom, his goodness, his right to rule. And when you do that, when you truly do that, you're positioning yourself to receive what he's been trying to give you all along. He let the last grains of sand fall and looked at me directly. "But when you demand, when you insist, when you come to God with your list of requirements and your timeline and your plan, you're essentially saying, 'I know better than you, I'm wiser than you, my way is superior to yours.' And the Father, he's not going to override your will. He's not going to force his blessings on you. He'll wait. He'll keep the gate ready to open, but he won't open it until you're willing to walk through it on his terms, not yours." I wiped my face with my sleeve, trying to compose myself enough to ask the question that was burning in my mind. "How do we teach this?" I asked. "How do I share this without people hearing condemnation, without them thinking they've done everything wrong, without them giving up entirely?" Jesus smiled for the first time that night, a sad smile, but genuine. "You tell them the truth," he said. "You tell them that it's not too late. You tell them that every prayer they've prayed in demand can be re-prayed in surrender. You tell them that the gate is still there, still waiting, and it will open the moment they're ready to walk through it with empty hands and a trusting heart." He stood up and offered me his hand. I took it, and he pulled me to my feet. We stood there together at the edge of the pool, and he put his arm around my shoulders like a brother, like a friend. "Tomorrow night," he said, "I'm going to show you what happens when people do surrender. I'm going to show you what's waiting on the other side of that gate. I'm going to show you the glory, the breakthrough, the miracles that are released when someone finally lets go and lets me be God." He paused, and his grip on my shoulder tightened. "But I'm also going to show you the judgment that's coming for those who refuse. Because time is running out, Jonathan. Time is running out, and there are millions of people who are going to stand before the Father one day and realize that they spent their entire lives demanding things from him instead of receiving what he was trying to give them. And that realization, that moment of understanding what they missed, will be more painful than anything they experienced on earth." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. "When?" I asked. "When is time running out?" He released my shoulder and stepped back, and as he did, he began to fade again, that same gradual dissolution into light and air. "Sooner than anyone thinks," his voice echoed, seeming to come from the stars themselves now. "Sooner than anyone is ready for. Come back tomorrow night, Jonathan. Come back and see the end of the story. Come back and see what's at stake." And then he was gone, and I was alone in the desert oasis with only the stars and the palm trees and the still pool for company. I stood there for a long time, shivering now that his warmth had departed, trying to process everything I'd seen and heard. The visions of those people, the man who lost his wife, the woman who missed her husband, the countless others whose demands had closed the very gate they were trying to open. They played over and over in my mind like a film I couldn't stop. And I realized something that made me fall to my knees again in the sand. I had been one of them. How many times had I come to God with my plans and asked him to bless them instead of asking him for his plans? How many times had I prayed, "God, I want this, make it happen," instead of, "God, what do you want? Help me surrender to it." How many of my own prayers had bounced off that gate because I was too busy demanding to surrender? I wept there in the sand. Not pretty, quiet tears, but gut-wrenching sobs that came from the deepest place in my soul. I wept for myself. I wept for all the people I'd seen in the visions. I wept for everyone watching this video who has been living in disappointment and bitterness because their demands went unanswered, while God's better plan waited on the other side of their surrender. When I finally had no more tears left, I stood up, brushed the sand off my jeans, and walked back to my truck. The sky was just beginning to lighten in the east, not quite dawn, but that pre-dawn glow that promises the sun is coming. I drove home in silence, too overwhelmed to even turn on the radio, and I knew that I had to share this no matter how hard it would be to hear. So here I am, recording this for you, and I need you to hear me clearly. This is not condemnation. This is not me saying you've been doing everything wrong. This is an invitation. This is Jesus himself extending his hand and saying, "There's a better way. There's a gate that will open for you. There's breakthrough waiting. But you have to come with surrender instead of demands." Look at your prayer requests in the comments from yesterday. Look at what you asked for, and now I want you to ask yourself honestly, were you demanding or surrendering? Were you telling God what he had to do, or were you asking him to do what he knows is best? If you were demanding, and listen, most of us have been, then I want you to repray that prayer right now. In the comments on this video, write it out again. But this time, add these words: "But not my will, Lord, yours." Even if your answer is no, even if your answer is wait, even if your answer is something completely different than what I'm asking for, your will, not mine. That's the prayer that opens the gate. That's the prayer that moves heaven. That's the prayer that releases miracles. Tomorrow night, tonight actually, since it's already February 9th, I'm going back to the oasis one final time. Jesus said he's going to show me what happens when people do surrender, and he's also going to show me the judgment that's coming for those who refuse. And I'm telling you right now, part 3 is going to be the most intense, the most challenging, and the most important part of this entire series. You need to be there for it. You need to subscribe if you haven't already. You need to set a reminder. You need to prepare your heart, because what's coming is going to require something from you. It's going to require a decision. It's going to require a response. The gate is waiting. The question is, are you going to keep demanding it open on your terms, or are you going to surrender and let God open it on his? I'll see you tomorrow night for part 3. Until then, remember, it's not too late. It's never too late to surrender, but time is running out, and the moment to choose is now. It was 2:33 a.m. on February 9th, 2026, when I made the drive to the desert oasis for the third and what I somehow knew would be the most intense night, and this time the atmosphere was different from the moment I left my house. The air itself felt charged, electric, like the moments before a massive thunderstorm breaks, and as I drove through the darkness with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached, I could see something on the horizon that shouldn't have been there. Light. Not the glow of a distant city, not lightning, but a pulsing rhythmic luminescence that seemed to be emanating from the exact location of the oasis, visible even from miles away, painting the underbelly of the cloudless sky with shades of gold and white that made my heart race and my breath catch in my throat. The temperature had dropped even further. My truck's dashboard read 29 degrees, and there was a wind that hadn't been present on the previous nights, a steady, powerful wind that buffeted my vehicle and sent tumbleweeds skittering across the road like they were fleeing from something. The stars overhead were so bright they looked artificial, like someone had turned up their intensity, and I could see the Milky Way stretched across the sky like a river of light, more vivid and clear than I'd ever seen it in my life. Before I go any further, I need to address what's been happening in the comments. Thousands of you have reprayed your prayers with surrender. Thousands of you have written out, "Not my will, but yours." And I'm getting messages, hundreds of them, from people saying that breakthrough has already started, jobs are opening up, relationships are being restored, healings are manifesting, financial provision is appearing from unexpected sources. And I want you to understand something. That's not coincidence. That's not luck. That's what happens when the gate opens. That's what happens when heaven moves in response to a surrendered heart. But I'm also getting pushback. I'm getting messages from people who are angry, who are saying this is manipulation, who are accusing me of being a false teacher, who are insisting that God answers all prayers regardless of our posture. And to those people, I say this with love, but also with urgency. You're about to see why that theology is not just wrong, but dangerous. You're about to see what Jesus showed me about the consequences of refusing to surrender. And I'm praying, I'm genuinely praying, that you'll have ears to hear and eyes to see before it's too late. If you haven't watched parts 1 and 2, stop right now and go watch them. You cannot understand what I'm about to share without that foundation. You cannot grasp the weight of what's coming without seeing the vision of the gate and understanding the cost of unsurrendered prayers. For those of you who are ready, who have been on this journey with me, leave your prayer request in the comments one more time, but this time I want you to add something specific. Jesus, I surrender not just my request, but my life, all of it, every area, every plan, every dream. I surrender it all to you. That's the prayer we're building toward. That's the prayer that's going to position you for what's about to be released. Now let me take you to the final night. As I got closer to the oasis, the light I'd seen from miles away grew more intense. It wasn't coming from a single source. It was emanating from the entire area, like the ground itself was glowing. And there was sound now too, carried on that powerful wind, a low, resonant hum that I could feel in my chest, in my bones, like the earth itself was vibrating at a frequency just below normal hearing. I parked my truck in the usual spot, but this time when I killed the engine, I sat there for several minutes, unable to move. Fear and anticipation warred within me. Jesus had said he would show me glory and judgment, breakthrough and consequences, and I knew that what I was about to witness would change me forever. When I finally stepped out of the truck, the wind hit me like a physical force, nearly knocking me backward. It was warm, impossibly warm given the freezing temperature, and it carried scents I couldn't identify, something like incense, something like flowers, something like ozone after lightning strikes. My jacket whipped around me, and I had to lean into the wind just to make forward progress. The walk to the oasis was surreal. The desert plants were moving violently in the wind, and in the starlight they looked like they were dancing, celebrating, worshiping. The sand beneath my feet seemed to glow faintly with each step, leaving luminescent footprints that faded after a few seconds. And that sound, that deep resonant hum, was getting louder, more complex, resolving into what almost sounded like voices, like a choir, singing in a language I didn't recognize but somehow understood in my spirit. When the oasis came into view, I stopped walking and just stared. The 7 palm trees were ablaze with light, not burning but glowing from within, every frond, every fiber of their trunks radiating golden white brilliance. The pool was no longer just reflecting light, it was generating it, the water itself luminous and moving in patterns that defied physics, swirling upward in spirals and columns that reached toward the sky before cascading back down. And standing at the center of the pool, his feet on the water's surface as if it were solid ground, was Jesus. But this was Jesus in his glory. And this was Jesus as John saw him in Revelation. His face was shining like the sun at full strength, so bright I couldn't look directly at it. His eyes were flames of fire that seemed to see through me, into me, past every defense and pretense straight to the core of my being. His hair was white like wool, like snow, and it moved in the wind with a life of its own. His robe was brilliant white, whiter than any earthly white, and it seemed to be woven from light itself. And from his chest, from his heart, beams of light were shooting out in all directions, piercing the darkness, illuminating everything they touched. I fell to my knees immediately, not by choice, but by compulsion. My legs simply gave out under the weight of his presence. I couldn't speak, I couldn't think, I could barely breathe. The glory radiating from him was so intense, so overwhelming, that every cell in my body was screaming that I was in the presence of the divine, the holy, the eternal. Jonathan! His voice boomed, and it wasn't just sound. It was power, authority, creative force. The palm trees bowed when he spoke. The water in the pool leaped higher. The very ground beneath me trembled. Are you ready to see what you came to see? I managed to nod, though I wasn't sure I was ready at all. Then watch, he commanded, and he raised his hands toward the sky. The stars above us began to move. I'm not talking about the normal movement of celestial bodies. I'm talking about the stars themselves rearranging, forming patterns, creating images in the sky like the largest screen imaginable. And in those stars, I saw visions begin to play out. But these weren't like the visions in the pool from the previous nights. These were more real, more vivid, more immediate. It was like I was actually there, actually witnessing what was happening. The first vision showed a woman, elderly, frail, lying in a hospital bed similar to the one from the previous night's vision. But this woman's face was different. There was peace there, acceptance, and she was praying. Father, she whispered, her voice weak but steady, I don't understand why this is happening. I'm scared. I don't want to leave my family, but I trust you. If this is my time, then I surrender to it. If you have healing for me, I receive it. But if you're calling me home, then I'm ready. Not my will, but yours. Always yours. I watched her prayer rise, and unlike the prayers from the previous night, this one didn't harden. It stayed soft, pliable, humble. And when it reached the gate, that massive pearl gate, the gate didn't just open, it exploded open. Light poured through, so bright and glorious that I had to shield my eyes even in the vision. And angels, I saw angels, descended on that hospital room, but they didn't heal her body. Instead, I watched as they surrounded her bed, and her family, who had been sitting vigil, suddenly felt compelled to gather close. And for the next 6 hours, that woman had the most profound conversations with her children and grandchildren. Decades of unspoken words were finally said, forgiveness was extended, blessings were spoken, love was declared. And when she finally took her last breath, she did so with a smile on her face, surrounded by family who had been transformed by those final hours, and I watched her spirit rise from her body and be escorted by those angels through the open gate into a glory so magnificent that the vision couldn't even fully capture it. That, Jesus said, his voice gentler now but still powerful, is what surrender looks like. She didn't get the healing she wanted, but she got something infinitely more valuable. She got my presence, my peace, and a death that brought life to her entire family. 3 of her grandchildren gave their lives to me because of what they witnessed in that room. Her daughter, who had been bitter and angry at me for years, was reconciled. Her son, who had walked away from faith, came back, all because she surrendered. The vision shifted, and now I saw a young man, maybe early 30s, sitting in his car outside an office building. He'd just been fired. I could see the termination letter on the passenger seat, and he was praying. God, I don't get it, he was saying, tears streaming down his face. I thought this job was from you. I thought this was where you wanted me, and now it's gone, and I don't know what to do, but... He paused, took a shaky breath. But I trust you. I don't understand, but I trust you. If you close this door, then you must have a better door to open, so I surrender this. I surrender my career, my plans, my timeline. Show me what you have for me. Again the prayer rose, soft and surrendered, and again the gate burst open. And I watched as, over the next 3 months, a series of coincidences led that young man to a completely different career path, one he'd never considered, one that seemed impossible given his background. But doors opened that shouldn't have opened. Connections were made that defied explanation, and within a year he was not only making twice what he'd made at the old job, but he was fulfilled in a way he'd never been before, and his new position gave him a platform to share his faith with hundreds of people who would never have set foot in a church. Surrender, Jesus said, and now he was walking across the water toward me, each step sending ripples of light across the pool's surface. Doesn't mean you don't get what you need. It means you get what I know you need, which is always better than what you think you need. He stepped off the water onto the sand and stood before me, and even though his glory was dimmed slightly, just enough that I could look at him without being blinded, the power radiating from him was still overwhelming. He reached down and placed his hand on my head, and warmth flooded through me, starting at the crown of my head and spreading through my entire body like liquid fire. "Now," he said, his voice taking on a tone that made my blood run cold, "watch what happens to those who refuse." The visions in the stars shifted again, and this time what I saw made me want to look away, but I couldn't. I was frozen, compelled to witness. I saw a man, successful, wealthy, powerful, standing in his office overlooking a city skyline. He was praying, but his prayer was more like a speech, a lecture directed at God. "I've built this empire," he was saying, gesturing to the view before him. "I've created jobs, I've given to charity, I've done everything right. And now you're telling me through this conviction, I'm feeling that I need to give it all up? That I need to surrender my business, my wealth, my influence? No, absolutely not. I've earned this. This is mine. You gave me the talent to build it, so it's mine to keep. I'll give you 10%. That's more than fair. But surrender it all? Never." I watched his prayer rise, and it was hard, crystallized, sharp. It hit the gate and bounced off, just like the prayers from the second night. But this time, I saw something else. I saw the man's heart begin to harden too, calcifying, becoming impenetrable. And over the next 10 years, I watched his life unfold and fast forward. His marriage crumbled, his children grew distant, his health deteriorated, and his wealth, the thing he'd refused to surrender, became his prison. He died alone in a hospital room, surrounded by luxury but devoid of love. And when his spirit left his body, I watched him approach the gate. But the gate didn't open. "I gave you everything," the man's spirit cried out. "I built an empire. I gave to charity. I was a good person." And I heard the Father's voice, not angry, but infinitely sad. "You gave me your money, but you never gave me your heart. You gave me your time, but you never gave me your surrender. You kept the throne of your life for yourself, and now you must face the consequences of that choice." I watched as the man was led away, not by angels, but by something else, something dark, and the vision mercifully faded before I could see where he was taken. But the implication was clear, and it made me physically ill. "No," I gasped, looking up at Jesus. "Please, no more. I can't." But he shook his head. "You must see it all," he said firmly. "You must see what's at stake, because time is running out, Jonathan. The day of judgment is coming sooner than anyone realizes, and there are millions, millions of people who are going to stand before the Father, having lived their entire lives with clenched fists, refusing to surrender, demanding that God serve them instead of surrendering to serve Him, and their eternal destiny hangs in the balance." The visions continued, and I saw them, dozens, hundreds, thousands of people who had refused to surrender. I saw a woman who had demanded God give her a specific man, and she died bitter and alone, having rejected the good men God sent her way because they weren't the one she wanted. I saw a pastor who had built a megachurch but refused to surrender his pride, his platform, his reputation, and I watched his ministry crumble and his soul face judgment for leading people astray with a gospel of prosperity instead of surrender. I saw parents who had demanded God heal their child in a specific way, and when he didn't, turned their backs on faith entirely, never knowing that God had been offering them a different kind of healing, a spiritual healing, an eternal healing, that they rejected because it wasn't what they wanted. Each vision was more heartbreaking than the last, and I was sobbing uncontrollably now, my whole body shaking with the weight of what I was witnessing. "Why?" I cried out. "Why do they refuse? Why won't they just surrender?" Jesus knelt beside me in the sand, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Because surrender feels like death," he said. "Because letting go feels like loss. Because trusting me with everything requires them to admit they're not in control, and that terrifies them. They would rather cling to their plans, their dreams, their agendas, even if those things are destroying them, than release them into my hands and trust that I have something better." He placed both hands on my shoulders and turned me to face him directly. His eyes, those eyes of flame, were wet with tears. "But here's what they don't understand," he said intensely. "Surrender isn't death. It's the doorway to life, real life, abundant life, eternal life. When you surrender to me, you don't lose. You gain. You gain my presence. You gain my peace. You gain my purpose. You gain access to resources in heaven that are beyond anything you could accumulate on earth. You gain an inheritance that can never be taken away. He stood and pulled me to my feet, and suddenly the visions in the stars changed again. Now I was seeing the opposite, people who had surrendered everything and the glory that followed. I saw a missionary couple who had surrendered their comfortable American life to serve in a remote village, and I watched as their obedience sparked a revival that swept through an entire region, bringing thousands into the kingdom. I saw a businessman who had surrendered his company to God's purposes, and I watched as God multiplied his resources beyond anything he could have achieved on his own, and he used that wealth to fund orphanages, schools, and churches around the world. I saw a single mother who had surrendered her fear and her need for security, trusting God to provide, and I watched as God opened doors for her and her children that led to breakthrough after breakthrough, and her testimony brought her entire extended family to faith. The visions were glorious, magnificent, overwhelming in their beauty, and I realized that for every tragic story of refusal, there were hundreds of triumphant stories of surrender. For every closed gate, there were thousands of open gates. For every person who walked away bitter, there were multitudes who walked forward in blessing. This, Jesus said, gesturing to the visions of glory, is what I want for everyone. This is what the Father has prepared for all who will surrender, but it requires a choice. It requires a decision, and that decision must be made before it's too late. The visions faded, and the stars returned to their normal positions. The light emanating from Jesus began to dim slightly, and the wind that had been so powerful started to calm. He walked back to the edge of the pool and stood there, looking out over the water, his back to me. "The time of grace is coming to an end," he said, his voice carrying clearly despite the distance between us. "Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Sooner than most people think. And when that day comes, when the final trumpet sounds, when the Son of Man returns in glory, the gate will close. Not temporarily, not until people get their act together, but permanently. And everyone who spent their lives demanding instead of surrendering, everyone who kept their fists clenched around their plans and their agendas and their rights, will find themselves on the wrong side of that gate." He turned to face me, and his expression was a mixture of love and urgency that took my breath away. "You have to tell them," he said. "You have to warn them. You have to show them that there's still time, but that time is running out. You have to call them to surrender, not in 30 days, not next week, but now, today, this moment." The ground beneath my feet began to tremble, and I looked down to see that the sand was glowing again, pulsing with light in rhythm with my heartbeat. When I looked back up, Jesus was right in front of me, so close I could feel the heat radiating from him. "Do you understand now?" he asked. "Do you understand why this message is so urgent? Do you understand what's at stake?" "Yes," I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. "Yes, I understand." "Then tomorrow night," he said, "I'm going to give you the practical application. I'm going to show you exactly how to teach people to surrender. I'm going to give you the steps, the process, the daily practice that will transform their prayers from demands into surrenders. And I'm going to give you a deadline, a specific date by which they must make this choice, because after that date, something shifts in the spiritual realm. After that date, the window of opportunity begins to close." He placed his hand over my heart one final time, and I felt something transfer from him to me, not just warmth, but authority, anointing, commissioning. "You've been marked for this," he said. "You've been chosen to carry this message, and everyone who watches these videos, everyone who hears these words, has also been marked. They've been given a divine opportunity. The question is, will they take it?" And then, just like the previous nights, he began to fade, but this time as he disappeared, he left behind something tangible, a presence, an atmosphere, a lingering glory that remained even after he was gone. The pool continued to glow softly, the palm trees continued to radiate a faint luminescence, and the air continued to hum with that frequency I'd felt when I first arrived. I stood there for hours, I don't know how long exactly, just soaking in that presence, letting everything I'd seen and heard settle into my spirit. The sun was beginning to rise when I finally walked back to my truck, and as I drove home, I could see the desert coming alive with the dawn, the colors, the shadows, the way the light painted everything gold and amber and rose, and I knew that I had been forever changed. I knew that I could never go back to casual Christianity, to comfortable faith, to prayers that demanded instead of surrendered. I knew that everything in my life had to come under the lordship of Jesus, not just in theory, but in practice, not just in my words, but in my actions. I'm recording this now, just hours after returning from that final night at the Oasis, and I'm still shaking. I'm still processing. I'm still overwhelmed by the weight of what I witnessed, the glory and the judgment, the breakthrough and the consequences, the open gates and the closed ones. And I need you to hear me clearly. This is not a game. This is not religious theater. This is not me trying to manipulate you or scare you or control you. This is me, standing before you as a messenger, delivering a message that I didn't ask for, but that I've been commissioned to share. The gate is still open. Right now, in this moment, as you're watching this video, the gate is still open, but it won't stay open forever. Jesus made that clear. Time is running out, and the moment to choose is now. Look at your life. Look at the areas where you're still holding on, still demanding, still insisting on your way instead of God's way. Look at the prayers you've been praying that have gone unanswered, and ask yourself honestly, have you been demanding or surrendering? In the comments right now, I want you to write out a prayer of complete surrender, not just surrender of your requests, but surrender of your life, every area, every plan, every dream, every relationship, every ambition, every fear, every hope, all of it. Lay it at the feet of Jesus and say, not my will, but yours, not my way, but yours, not my timing, but yours. I surrender it all. That's the prayer that opens the gate. That's the prayer that releases heaven. That's the prayer that positions you for the glory instead of the judgment. Tonight actually, since it's already February 10th, I'm going to share part 4, the final part of this series. And in that final part, I'm going to give you the practical steps. I'm going to give you the 30-minute daily practice. I'm going to give you the specific deadline that Jesus gave me. And I'm going to issue a final call to action that will require a response from you. But you can't wait until tomorrow to surrender. You have to do it now. You have to do it today, because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow, and the opportunity that's in front of you right now might not be there later. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Set a reminder for part 4. Prepare your heart for what's coming, because the final part is going to be the most practical, the most challenging, and the most life-changing part of this entire series. The gate is open. The question is, will you walk through it? Until then, remember, surrender isn't loss. It's gain. It's not death. It's life. It's not the end. It's the beginning of everything you've been praying for. It was 11:47 p.m. on February 10th, 2026, when I returned to the desert oasis one final time, and this time I came not in the dead of night, but in the late evening, and the difference was profound. The moon was full, hanging low and massive on the horizon like a silver disk, casting the desert in shades of blue and silver and shadow, and as I made that now familiar drive down the rutted dirt road, I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and grief, knowing that this would be the last time I would experience what I had experienced over these past 4 nights, knowing that after tonight everything would be different, knowing that the message I was about to receive would be the culmination of everything Jesus had been building toward, and that it would require not just my obedience, but the obedience of everyone who would hear it. The temperature was warmer tonight, in the mid-50s, and there was no wind, just a profound stillness that made every sound seem amplified. I could hear my truck's engine echoing off distant rock formations. I could hear the crunch of gravel under my tires. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and quick with nervous energy. And as I approached the oasis, I could see that it looked different in the moonlight, less supernatural, more natural, but no less sacred. The 7 palm trees cast long shadows across the sand. The pool reflected the moon like a mirror, and everything was bathed in that ethereal silver light that made the world look like a black and white photograph come to life. Before I take you into what happened on this final night, I need to acknowledge what's been happening since part 3 went live. The response has been overwhelming, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Thousands of you have written out prayers of complete surrender. Thousands of you have shared testimonies of immediate breakthrough, healings manifesting, jobs appearing, relationships being restored, financial provision arriving, peace flooding in where there was only anxiety. The gate is opening for so many of you, and I'm watching in real time as heaven moves in response to surrendered hearts. But I'm also seeing the resistance. I'm seeing the anger. I'm seeing people who are calling me a cult leader, a manipulator, a false prophet. I'm seeing accusations that I'm using fear tactics, that I'm twisting scripture, that I'm leading people astray. And to those people, I want to say this one final time. I understand your skepticism. I understand your concern. But I'm begging you, I'm literally begging you, to set aside your theological frameworks for just a moment and ask the Holy Spirit if there's truth in what I'm sharing. Ask Him if maybe, just maybe, you've been approaching prayer from a place of demand instead of surrender. Ask Him if the gate has been closed in your life, not because God is withholding, but because you've been unwilling to let go. This is part 4, This is the final part, and if you haven't watched parts 1, 2, and 3, you need to stop right now and go watch them, because what I'm about to share will make no sense without that foundation. You need to see the vision of the gate. You need to understand the cost of unsurrendered prayers. You need to witness the glory and the judgment. All of that has been building to this moment, to this final encounter, to this practical application that Jesus is about to give. For those of you who have been on this journey with me from the beginning, I want you to do something different with your prayer request today. I want you to write in the comments, Jesus, I'm ready for the 30-day challenge. I'm ready to learn how to pray with surrender. I'm ready to walk through the gate. Show me how. That's your commitment. That's your declaration. That's you saying yes to what's about to be revealed. Now let me take you to the final night. I parked my truck and sat there for a long moment, just looking at the oasis bathed in moonlight. It was beautiful in a completely different way than it had been on the previous nights. Less dramatic, less overwhelming, but somehow more intimate. The supernatural fireworks were gone, replaced by a quiet sacredness that felt like coming home. I stepped out of the truck, and the night air was cool, but not cold, comfortable, welcoming. I could smell the desert, that distinctive scent of creosote and sage and dry earth. I could hear an owl calling in the distance, and somewhere far away, a coyote answered. The sand beneath my boots was soft and yielding, and I walked slowly toward the oasis, not rushing, just being present in the moment. When I reached the edge of the pool, I knelt in my usual spot, and I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. There was a smooth stone there about the size of my palm, and it was warm to the touch despite the cool air. I picked it up and held it, and somehow I knew that Jesus had left it there for me, a tangible reminder of these encounters. Jesus, I said aloud, my voice quiet in the stillness, I'm here, I'm ready. Show me what you want me to share. Show me how to help them surrender. The response wasn't immediate like the previous nights. There was no sudden temperature change, no dramatic manifestation of glory. Instead, there was just a gradual awareness that I wasn't alone anymore. A presence settled over the oasis like a blanket, warm and comforting and unmistakably him. And then he was sitting beside me, not standing in glory, not radiating overwhelming light, but sitting in the sand next to me like a friend, like a brother, dressed simply, his face visible and kind and filled with such love that it made my throat tighten with emotion. Jonathan, he said softly, and his voice was gentle now, conversational, intimate. Are you ready to learn how to teach them? Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'm ready. He smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine, and he picked up a handful of sand, letting it run through his fingers just like he had on the previous nights. Surrender, he said, watching the sand fall, is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice. It's a moment-by-moment choice. And most Christians fail at it not because they don't want to surrender, but because they don't know how. They don't have a framework. They don't have a process. They try to surrender everything all at once, and they get overwhelmed, and they give up. He let the last grains of sand fall and turned to look at me. So I'm going to give you a process, a 30-day challenge, a daily practice that will train their hearts to surrender, that will rewire their prayers from demands to submissions, that will position them to walk through the gate and access everything the Father has been trying to give them. He stood up and walked to the edge of the pool, and the moonlight reflecting off the water cast silver patterns across his face. Here's how it works, he said, and his voice took on a teaching quality, clear and authoritative. Every day for the next 30 days, they're going to spend 30 minutes in what I'm calling the surrender session. Not 30 minutes of regular prayer, not 30 minutes of Bible reading, but 30 minutes specifically focused on surrender, and it's going to be broken into 6 5-minute segments. He turned to face me, and I could see that he was serious, focused, intent on making sure I understood every detail. Write this down, he said. Share this exactly as I'm giving it to you. Don't add to it. Don't take away from it. This is the process that will transform their prayer lives. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app, my fingers trembling slightly as I prepared to type. I'm ready, I said. Segment 1, 5 minutes of acknowledgement, he began. They start by acknowledging who I am and who they are. They speak out loud. This is important. It must be out loud. Declarations of my sovereignty, my wisdom, my goodness, my right to rule their lives. And they acknowledge their own limitations, their own inability to control outcomes, their own need for a savior. This isn't self-deprecation. This is truth-telling. This is positioning themselves rightly in relation to me. He paused, making sure I was getting it all down. I nodded, typing furiously. Segment 2, 5 minutes of inventory. he continued. They ask the Holy Spirit to show them where they're holding on, where they're demanding, where they're trying to control. They go through the major areas of their life, relationships, finances, career, health, family, ministry, and they ask, where am I clenching my fist? Where am I refusing to let go? And they write down what the Spirit reveals. They make a list. They get specific. I could feel the weight of what he was sharing, the practical wisdom of it, the way it would force people to confront their own resistance to surrender. Segment 3, 5 minutes of confession, Jesus said, his voice gentle but firm. They take that list from segment 2 and they confess it, not with shame, not with condemnation, but with honesty. They say, Jesus, I've been demanding that you give me this relationship. I've been insisting that you provide this amount of money. I've been trying to control this situation. I confess that I've been playing God in this area of my life. I've been trusting my wisdom instead of yours. Forgive me. He walked back toward me and sat down again, closer this time, and I could feel the warmth radiating from him even though he wasn't in his glorified form. Segment 4, 5 minutes of release, he said. This is the heart of it. This is where the actual surrender happens. They take each item from their list and they physically release it. I want them to hold their hands out, palms up, and visualize placing each thing into my hands. And they speak it out loud. Jesus, I release this relationship to you. I release this financial need to you. I release this dream to you. I release this fear to you. I let go. I trust you with it. Not my will, but yours. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face as I typed, because I could see how powerful this would be, how transformative, how it would literally retrain people's hearts and minds. Segment 5, 5 minutes of receiving, Jesus continued, and his own eyes were glistening with tears now. After they release, they receive. They ask me what I want to give them in exchange for what they've surrendered, and they sit in silence and listen, and I will speak. I will give them my peace. I will give them my perspective. I will give them my promises, not the promises they wanted, but the promises I have for them, and they write down what they hear, they record it, they treasure it. He reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder, and the warmth intensified, spreading through my whole body. Segment 6, 5 minutes of declaration, he said. They end by declaring their trust, by speaking out loud their commitment to surrender, by saying, I trust you, Jesus. I trust your timing. I trust your methods. I trust your outcomes, even if I don't understand, even if it's hard, even if it costs me everything I thought I wanted. I trust you, your will, not mine, your way, not mine, your glory, not mine. He released my shoulder and stood up, and I stood with him, my phone still in my hand, the notes app filled with what he'd just dictated. 30 days, he said firmly. 30 minutes a day, 6 segments of 5 minutes each. If they will commit to this, if they will actually do this, not just read about it or think about it, but actually practice it, their prayer lives will be transformed. The gate will open, heaven will move, breakthrough will come. He walked to the center of the clearing, and the moonlight seemed to intensify around him, making him glow softly. But there's a deadline, he said, and his voice took on that tone of urgency I'd heard on the third night. They need to start this challenge by March 12th, 2026. That's exactly 30 days from today. If they start by March 12th and complete the full 30 days, they'll finish by April 11th. And April 11th is significant in the spiritual realm. It's a date when something shifts. It's a date when a window of opportunity closes for some and opens wider for others. I can't explain all the reasons why. Some things are hidden in the Father's sovereign purposes, but I'm telling you, and I'm telling them, that the time to act is now. He turned to face me directly, and his expression was intense, almost fierce. This isn't manipulation, he said, as if reading my thoughts. This isn't me creating false urgency. This is me, in my mercy, giving them a specific time frame, a clear deadline, a definite call to action. Because without a deadline, people procrastinate. Without a specific challenge, people remain in generalities. Without a clear process, people stay stuck in their old patterns. I nodded, understanding, but also feeling the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. What if they start late? I asked. What if they don't see this video until after March 12th? His expression softened. Then they start when they see it, he said gently. The deadline isn't about me being rigid or punishing. It's about creating a sense of urgency, about helping them understand that time is precious and opportunities don't last forever. But my grace is always available. My gate is always ready to open for a surrendered heart. The deadline is a gift, not a weapon. He walked back to me and took both of my hands in his, and I could feel calluses on his palms, the hands of a carpenter, the hands that had crafted the universe and also built tables and chairs in a workshop in Nazareth. I need you to understand something, he said, looking into my eyes with an intensity that made me feel like he was looking into my soul. This message isn't for everyone. Not everyone who watches these videos is going to respond. Not everyone who hears this call is going to answer, and that's okay, that's their choice. But for those who do respond, for those who do take this challenge, for those who do commit to these 30 days of surrender, their lives will never be the same. He released my hands and stepped back, and as he did, the atmosphere began to shift again. The presence that had been so tangible started to lighten, to lift, and I knew that our time was coming to an end. "There's one more thing," he said, and his voice was fading slightly, becoming more distant. "I need you to tell them about the community. They can't do this alone. They need to support each other. I want you to create a space, in the comments, in a group, wherever, where people who are taking this challenge can check in daily, can share their struggles, can celebrate their breakthroughs, can encourage each other. Surrender is hard. It goes against every natural instinct. They're going to need each other. I promised. I'll create that space. I'll facilitate that community." He smiled one last time, and it was a smile of such approval, such love, such pride that it made my heart swell. "You've been faithful," he said. "You've delivered the message I gave you. You've been vulnerable. You've been obedient. And now the rest is up to them. The gate is open. The challenge is issued. The deadline is set. Now they must choose." And then he was gone. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, but simply absent, and I was alone in the oasis with just the moonlight and the palm trees and the still pool for company. I stood there for a long time, looking at the notes on my phone, reading and rereading the 6 segments of the surrender session, feeling the weight of what I was about to share with the world. And then I knelt one final time in that spot where I'd knelt for 4 consecutive nights, and I prayed my own prayer of surrender. "Jesus," I said, my voice breaking with emotion, "I surrender this message to you. I surrender the response to you. I surrender my reputation to you. I surrender my fear of being misunderstood to you. I surrender my need for people to like me or approve of me to you. I just want to be faithful. I just want to be obedient. So I release all of this into your hands. Do with it what you will. Your will, not mine. Your way, not mine. Your glory, not mine." And in that moment, I felt a peace settle over me that I'd never experienced before. A deep, unshakable peace that had nothing to do with circumstances and everything to do with surrender. I understood, finally, what Jesus had been trying to show me all along. Surrender isn't loss. It's gain. It's not death. It's life. It's not the end. It's the beginning. I drove home as the moon set, and the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, and I knew that I would never return to that oasis in the same way. It would always be sacred ground to me, but the encounters were complete. The message had been delivered. Now it was time to share it. So here I am, recording this final part, and I'm going to be very direct with you about what I need you to do. First, if you're ready to take the 30-day surrender challenge, I need you to write in the comments right now. "I'm in. I commit to 30 days, 30 minutes a day, starting insert date." Make it public. Make it official. Make it a declaration that you're serious about this. Second, I need you to set a daily reminder on your phone for your surrender session. Pick a time, early morning is best, before the day gets away from you, and block out 30 minutes. Treat it like an appointment with Jesus, because that's exactly what it is. Third, I need you to get a journal specifically for this challenge. Don't use a random notebook or your phone's notes app. Get an actual journal that you dedicate solely to this 30-day process. You're going to use it for segment 2, inventory, segment 5, receiving, and to track your progress. Fourth, I need you to find an accountability partner, someone else who's taking this challenge, someone you can text or call when it gets hard, when you want to quit, when you're struggling to let go. Use the comments section to connect with others, form groups, support each other. Fifth, I need you to share this video series with at least 3 people who need to hear this message. Don't just share it casually. Send it with a personal note. Tell them why you think they need to see it. Invite them to take the challenge with you. Now let me give you the 6 segments one more time, clearly and concisely, so you can screenshot this or write it down. The 30-day surrender challenge. 30 minutes, daily, 6 segments of 5 minutes. Each segment, 1 minutes 1 to 5, acknowledgement. Speak out loud declarations of who Jesus is, sovereign, wise, good, in control, and who you are, limited, dependent, in need of a Savior. Position yourself rightly in relation to Him. Segment 2, minutes 6 to 10, inventory. Ask the Holy Spirit to show you where you're holding on, demanding, or trying to control. Go through major life areas, relationships, finances, career, health, family, ministry, and write down what He reveals. Segment 3, minutes 11:15, confession. Take your list from segment 2 and confess each item honestly. Jesus, I've been demanding, I've been insisting, I've been trying to control. Forgive me. Segment 4, minutes 16 to 20, release. Hold your hands out, palms up. Visualize placing each item from your list into Jesus' hands. Speak out loud. Jesus, I release specific item to you. I let go. I trust you with it. Not my will, but yours. Segment 5, minutes 21 to 25, receiving. Ask Jesus what He wants to give you in exchange for what you've surrendered. Sit in silence and listen. Write down what you hear, His peace, His perspective, His promises. Segment 6, minutes 26 to 30. Declaration. Speak out loud your trust and commitment. I trust you, Jesus. I trust your timing, your methods, your outcomes, even if I don't understand, even if it's hard. Your will, not mine. Your way, not mine. Your glory, not mine. That's it. That's the process. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's going to require discipline. It's going to require consistency. It's going to require you to confront areas of your life that you've been avoiding. But I promise you, if you commit to this for 30 days, you will be transformed. Now, about the deadline. Today is February 10th, 2026. You need to start this challenge by March 12th, 2026 at the latest. That gives you 30 days to prepare, to get your journal, to find your accountability partner, to clear your schedule. And if you start by March 12th and complete all 30 days, you'll finish by April 11th, 2026. Why is April 11th significant? I can't fully explain it. Jesus said some things are hidden in the Father's sovereign purposes, but He made it clear that it's a date when something shifts in the spiritual realm. It's a date when a window of opportunity closes for some and opens wider for others, and I'm trusting Him with that, and I'm asking you to trust Him too. But here's what I want to be very clear about. If you don't see this video until after March 12th, don't use that as an excuse not to start. Start when you see it. The deadline is about creating urgency, not about limiting grace. God's gate is always ready to open for a surrendered heart, always. Now I need to address something that I know some of you are thinking. Jonathan, this sounds like works. This sounds like I have to earn God's favor by doing this 30-day challenge. And I need to be absolutely clear. That is not what this is. You cannot earn God's favor. You cannot earn His love. You cannot earn salvation or grace or mercy. Those are gifts, freely given, received by faith alone. But here's what this challenge is. It's a tool for transformation. It's a process for retraining your heart and mind. It's a practice that aligns you with how the kingdom operates. You don't do this to make God love you more. He already loves you completely. You do this to position yourself to receive what He's been trying to give you all along. Think of it like this. If you're trying to receive a radio signal, you have to tune your radio to the right frequency. The signal is always broadcasting. It never stops. But if your radio is tuned to the wrong frequency, you won't hear it. This 30-day challenge is about tuning your heart to the frequency of surrender so you can receive what heaven has been broadcasting over your life all along. I also need to address the people who are going to watch this and feel condemned. Maybe you've been praying demands for years. Maybe you've been bitter because your prayers went unanswered. Maybe you've walked away from faith because you felt like God failed you. And now you're watching this and feeling like it's too late, like you've missed your chance, like God is angry with you. Listen to me. It's not too late. It's never too late. The gate is still open. Right now, in this moment, the gate is still open. And Jesus is standing there with His arms wide open, waiting for you to come back, waiting for you to surrender, waiting to give you everything you've been longing for. The prodigal son didn't have to clean himself up before he came home. He didn't have to get his act together. He just had to turn around and start walking toward the Father. And the Father ran to meet him. That's the heart of God. That's who Jesus is. He's not waiting for you to be perfect. He's waiting for you to surrender. So if you're watching this and you've been away from God, if you've been angry at Him, if you've been bitter or disillusioned or convinced that He doesn't care, I'm telling you right now, He does care. He cares so much that He orchestrated these 4 nights of encounters just to get this message to you. He cares so much that He's been pursuing you even when you were running from Him. He cares so much that He's giving you this opportunity right now to start fresh. Take the challenge. Commit to the 30 days. Let Him transform your heart. Let Him show you what surrender really means. Let Him open the gate and flood your life with breakthrough. Now, I want to share something personal with you. Over these past 4 days, since the first encounter on February 7th, I've been doing this surrender session myself. I've been practicing what I'm preaching, and I can tell you from personal experience that it's already changing me. I've discovered areas of my life where I've been holding on so tightly: my career, my reputation, my relationships, my plans for the future. I've been praying about these things for years, but I've been praying demands, not surrenders. I've been telling God what I need Him to do instead of asking Him what He wants to do. And over these past 4 days, as I've practiced releasing these things, as I've opened my hands and let go, I've experienced a freedom I didn't even know I was missing. Opportunities have opened up that I never expected. Relationships have been restored that I thought were dead. Peace has flooded areas of my life that were filled with anxiety. And it's not because I did everything right. It's because I finally let go and let God be God. That's what I want for you. That's what Jesus wants for you. That's why He gave me this message to share. So here's my final call to action, and I need you to really hear this. Action step 1, write in the comments right now: I commit to the 30-day surrender challenge starting. Date. Make it public. Make it official. Action step 2, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because I'm going to be posting daily encouragement videos throughout the challenge. Short videos, just 5-10 minutes, to keep you motivated, to address common struggles, to celebrate breakthroughs. Action. Step 3, get your journal today. Don't wait. Go to a store or order one online, but get it today. Make it special. Make it sacred. This is going to be a record of your transformation. Action step 4, set your daily reminder right now. Pull out your phone, open your calendar or reminder app, and block out 30 minutes every day for the next 30 days. Treat it like the most important appointment of your day, because it is. Action step 5, find your accountability partner. Look through the comments, reach out to someone you know, join the community group I'm going to create. Don't try to do this alone. Action step 6, share this video series with 3 people who need it. Send them parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. Tell them why you think they need to see it. Invite them to take the challenge with you. And here's the most important action step of all. Action step 7, right now, before you do anything else, pray this prayer out loud. Don't just read it. Don't just think it. Speak it out loud. Jesus, I surrender. I surrender my plans, my dreams, my agendas, my demands. I surrender my relationships, my finances, my career, my health, my family, my future. I surrender my need to control, my need to understand, my need to have things my way. I acknowledge that you are God and I am not. I acknowledge that your ways are higher than my ways, your thoughts higher than my thoughts. I confess that I've been demanding instead of surrendering, insisting instead of trusting. Forgive me. I release everything into your hands. I trust you with my life, not my will, but yours. Not my way, but yours. Not my timing, but yours. Not my glory, but yours. I commit to the 30-day surrender challenge. I commit to learning how to pray with a surrendered heart. I commit to walking through the gate you've opened. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for pursuing me. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm yours, completely yours. In Jesus' name, amen. If you prayed that prayer, write amen in the comments right now. Let me see who's committing to this journey. I want to end by taking you back to the desert oasis one final time in your imagination. Picture those 7 palm trees standing tall in the moonlight. Picture that still pool reflecting the stars. Picture the sand, cool and soft beneath your feet. Picture Jesus standing there waiting for you, His arms open wide, His face filled with love and anticipation. The gate is behind Him, that massive pearl gate, and it's open. It's open wide, and light is pouring through, light so bright and glorious that it makes everything else look dim by comparison. And Jesus is beckoning you forward. He's calling your name. He's inviting you to walk through that gate and into everything the Father has prepared for you. But you can't walk through with clenched fists. You can't walk through carrying all your demands and agendas and plans. You have to come with open hands. You have to come with a surrendered heart. You have to come trusting that what's on the other side of that gate is better than anything you're holding on to. So, what's it going to be? Are you going to keep standing outside the gate, demanding that God do things your way? Or are you going to surrender, let go, and walk through into the abundant life He's been trying to give you all along? The choice is yours. The opportunity is now. The deadline is March 12th to start, April 11th to finish. But the moment to decide is right now, as you're watching this video, as you're hearing these words, as the Holy Spirit is stirring something in your heart. Don't ignore it. Don't push it away. Don't tell yourself you'll do it later. Later might be too late. The window of opportunity doesn't stay open forever. Choose surrender, choose trust, choose life. The gate is open. Jesus is waiting. Heaven is ready to move. All you have to do is let go. I'll be here with you every day of this journey. I'll be posting daily encouragement. I'll be praying for everyone who takes this challenge. I'll be celebrating your breakthroughs and supporting you through your struggles. But I can't do the surrendering for you. Only you can do that. So do it. Do it now. Do it today. Take the challenge. Commit to the 30 days. Let God transform your prayer life, your heart, your entire existence. This is Jonathan Rumi, and I'm telling you from personal experience, from 4 nights of encounters with Jesus in a desert oasis, from everything I've seen and heard and witnessed. Surrender is the key that unlocks everything. The gate is open. Will you walk through?